In a quiet town nestled in Georgia, 17-year-old Amara Johnson had a passion that made her stand out: cars. Not just any cars, but muscle cars, old engines and classic American steel. While most girls in her grade were into fashion or TikTok trends, Amara spent her weekends in her uncle's garage, covered in grease and humming 70s rock while rebuilding transmissions. One sunny Saturday afternoon, Amara was biking home from the store when she spotted a classic candy apple red 1967 Ford Mustang on the side of the road, hood up, steam rising. The car gleamed under the sun, but clearly something was wrong. Her instincts kicked in. She skidded her bike to a halt, dropped it, and approached. Behind the wheel stood a sharply dressed man in his early 40s, looking frustrated and out of place with a phone in one hand and a spotless white handkerchief in the other. It didn't take Amara long to recognize him: David Langston, the reclusive millionaire who had recently moved into the sprawling mansion on the hill just outside of town. Rumors said he had retired young from Silicon Valley and had money most folks only dreamed of. "Car trouble?" she asked, eyes narrowing at the leaking hose beneath the hood. He looked at her, surprised. "Yeah, radiator hose blew, I think. I called for roadside, but they said it'll be 2 hours." Amara peered in. "I can fix it. If you've got a clamp and some tape in your trunk, I can patch it enough to get you home." David blinked. "Seriously? You're what, 16? 17? And I've been fixing engines since I was 10. Trust me." With a skeptical nod, he popped the trunk. Sure enough, she found a small toolbox, good enough. Within 10 minutes, she had jury-rigged the hose, cleaned the connectors, and even adjusted the fan belt that had started to fray. David started the engine. It roared to life. "Impressive," he said, genuinely. "I'll admit I didn't expect, well, a girl like me." Amara smirked, wiping her hands on a rag. "Someone your age to know Mustangs this well," he corrected. They chatted for a while longer. David, curious, asked how she learned so much. She spoke of her uncle, the garage, her dream of being a mechanical engineer, maybe even designing cars for Ford one day. "You've got the drive," he said. "People like you, smart, fearless, you don't need luck. But a little help doesn't hurt either." As he turned to thank her again, his eyes fell on the ring on her finger. It was an old silver band with a tiny sapphire, simple, worn, but clearly meaningful. "That's a beautiful ring," he said. "Is it from someone special?" Amara hesitated for a moment. Her voice softened. "It was my mom's. She passed away last year. She was the reason I started working on cars. Said it was the only way I'd ever be free." David's demeanor changed. He knelt slightly to her eye level. "I lost someone once too. I know how hard that is. But you're honoring her in the best way possible." A long pause. Then, surprising even himself, he asked, "How would you feel about an internship this summer?" "At my garage. I collect classics. Could use someone who knows what they are doing." Amara's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "As serious as a Mustang with a blown hose." That summer changed everything. Amara worked on vintage Ferraris, Mustangs, and even a '59 Cadillac. David mentored her, not just in cars but in business, discipline, and confidence. He eventually helped her apply to MIT, writing her recommendation letter himself. Years later, Amara Johnson became one of the youngest engineers ever hired by Ford's innovation team. She never took off that sapphire ring. And every time she looked at it, she remembered that the path to greatness sometimes begins on the side of the road, with nothing but your hands, your heart, and the courage to speak up. 2 years had passed since Amara first met David Langston on that dusty roadside. She was now 19, tall with a quiet confidence, and finishing her second year at Georgia Tech with a major in mechanical engineering. Her story had spread across town and even reached the national stage, featured in a digital magazine titled Grease and Grit: The Girl Who Fixed a Millionaire's Mustang. But beneath the polished surface of success, Amara wrestled with a truth she rarely shared. She felt caught between two worlds. In the elite classrooms of Atlanta, She was often the only black woman in the room, the only one who spoke of growing up fixing rusted Camaros behind a tin-roof garage. She carried the expectations of her community, her late mother's dreams, and her own ambitions like a weight in her backpack. One evening, as she was organizing tools in the Langston auto barn, a workshop David had built with her in mind, she heard the familiar rumble of a Mustang outside. But it wasn't David. It was a young man maybe her age, with dreadlocks tied back and eyes that looked too old for his years. He stepped out slowly, cautious. "You Amara?" he asked. "I am. And you are?" "Name's Jalen. This used to be my granddad's car. I heard you were the one who could bring it back." Amara examined the car, a beat-up '68 Mustang fastback with flaking paint, cracked leather seats, and the ghost of something noble beneath all the decay. She nodded. "This one's got stories in its bones." "Just like me," Jalen said with a dry smile. She took on the project, and as the weeks passed, so did the walls between them. Jalen turned out to be a poet, raised by his grandmother in Macon. He hadn't been in school for a while, life had forced him to grow up too fast. Yet he had a way of speaking that made her quiet thoughts feel loud. One night, under the neon lights of the garage, as they debated whether to rebuild or replace the carburetor, he asked about her ring. Amara hesitated. "It's from my mom. She gave it to me a week before she died. Said it was her protection stone. I never take it off." "I get it," he said softly. "We carry them with us." But things were changing. David Langston had started to pull back, traveling more, rarely returning calls. There were whispers that he was ill. One day, Amara received a thick envelope at the garage. Inside was a letter and a key. "Amara, you've always been more than just a mechanic. I saw it the moment you fixed my Mustang. You've got vision, strength, soul. I may not be around much longer, so I'm entrusting the Langston auto barn to you. Do with it what you will, but I hope you keep building, keep dreaming. The world needs more people like you. All my respect. David." Amara stood frozen. The man who had once doubted her on the roadside had just handed her a legacy. But as with all legacies, it came with choices. Ford Motor Company had just offered her a prestigious co-op in Michigan, working with their EV division. It was the dream she'd nurtured since she was 12. Yet here she was with the deed to a garage, a half-built Mustang, and a boy who made her question whether dreams could be bigger than just success. Amara found herself at a crossroads, between future and foundation, ambition and loyalty, heart and head. One rainy night, she sat in the garage, staring at the sapphire ring that had never left her finger. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "Freedom isn't about where you go. It's about who you bring with you." She stood, picked up a wrench, and turned to Jalen. "Let's finish your grandfather's car. Then I've got a few decisions to make." The days stretched longer after Amara received David Langston's letter. The Langston auto barn now belonged to her, not just the tools or the blueprints on the wall, but the name, the weight, the dream behind it. She hadn't told anyone yet, not even Jalen. Part of her was still wrestling with it. The garage smelled of steel, motor oil, and old ambition. Rain tapped gently on the roof, echoing like an old memory. The Mustang they'd been working on, the one Jalen inherited, was finally starting to take shape. Fresh coat of paint, new suspension, handcrafted interior. Amara had brought it back from the brink, just like she did with herself. But there was pressure, and it came from every angle. Ford's co-op program wanted an answer. The letter had said, "This is a competitive opportunity. You have until May 15th to confirm your participation." It was May 3rd. Meanwhile, the town of Fairhill had begun whispering. A young black woman inheriting Langston's property? Some admired her. Others raised eyebrows. One afternoon, Amara stopped by her uncle's house, the man who had taught her how to use a torque wrench before she could spell it. Uncle Ray sat on his porch, sipping coffee from an old mug that said, "Engine Whisperer." "You're thinking of walking away from Detroit?" he asked, rocking slowly. I don't know. That garage, it's more than a place. David built it because he believed in me. I could turn it into something real for kids like me. A community space. A school. A haven. Ray squinted into the sun. Dreams don't die if you leave them for a while. But they sure fade if you stay out of fear. She looked down. I'm not afraid. Then why haven't you made the call? Asterisk asterisk. Jalen was waiting for her when she returned to the garage. His eyes searched hers. You've been quiet, he said. You thinking of leaving? She hesitated. I got the offer from Ford. EV division. Big deal. But if I take it, I'll have to leave the shop. This place, what we built, someone else might tear it down. Jalen leaned against the Mustang. I can keep it going. You take the shot. Detroit needs your hands just as much as this place does. And you. I'm not going anywhere. But I'll wait if that's what you're asking. Her heart twisted. She had spent years building engines, fixing what was broken. But people weren't machines. Relationships didn't come with schematics. Asterisk asterisk. 3 days later, Amara boarded a flight to Detroit. She hadn't sold the garage. She'd hired local kids to help Jalen keep it running while she was gone. She set up a GoFundMe, branded the space the Langston Initiative, Learn, Build, Drive, and posted an open call for young gearheads from across Georgia to apply for apprenticeships. Her mother's ring stayed on her finger. Asterisk asterisk. Detroit was a different world, faster, colder, more rigid. Ford's headquarters stood like a fortress. The people were sharp, focused, brilliant. Amara found herself building components for prototype EV systems by day and video calling Jalen and the kids at the garage by night. 6 months passed. Then a year. One winter evening, as snow fell like powdered glass outside her apartment window, Amara received a package in the mail. Inside was a photo of the fully restored Mustang, parked in front of the garage. A banner above it read, Johnson Langston Auto Lab, where steel meets soul. On the back of the photo, in Jalen's handwriting, we're still building. But it's not the same without you. Ready when you are. Tears welled in her eyes. Not of sadness but of clarity. Asterisk asterisk. Amara returned to Fairhill the following spring. But not to stay. She'd worked out a plan, 6 months at Ford. 6 months at Langston. Back and forth. Building in 2 worlds, forging her own lane. One where she didn't have to choose between legacy and future, between city and home, between innovation and love. Because some engines don't just power cars. They power movements. The return to Fairhill wasn't quiet. News of Amara Johnson's dual life, as a Ford engineer and the founder of the Langston Initiative, had reached the ears of powerful people. A week after her arrival back at the garage, she was greeted by a sharply dressed man in a black Mercedes, his expression slick with confidence. Ms. Johnson, he said, extending a hand. My name's Vincent Harrow. I represent VELOK Motors. We're scouting locations for a state-of-the-art electric vehicle hub. We'd like to make you an offer on this property. Amara narrowed her eyes. This property isn't for sale. Vincent smiled tightly. Everything is at the right price. He handed her a manila folder. Inside was an offer in writing, $2.4 million. Enough money to change everything. But Amara didn't blink. This garage is already a hub, she said. For my students. For this town. And it's not for sale. As Harrow drove away, Amara knew the fight had only begun. Asterisk asterisk. That night, she called a town hall. The place was packed, students, parents, old mechanics, young dreamers. She stood beneath the hanging lights of the garage, her voice clear and unwavering. They want to pave over what we've built. But we are not just a garage. We're a movement. And we're going to show them what we can do. The room erupted in applause. Jalen stepped beside her, gently taking her hand. They want a show, he whispered. Let's give 'em one. Asterisk asterisk. A month later, Amara announced the first annual Steel and Soul Classic, a statewide high school and trade school auto build-off. Each team would have 3 months to restore or build a car from scratch, gas, hybrid or electric. The winner would get a $50,000 grant, and their vehicle featured in Motor Trend. The sponsors lined up. So did the competitors. But so did VELOK. Vincent Harrow returned with his own sponsored team, students from a private tech academy in Atlanta, funded by millions, armed with factory-made tools and software Amara could only dream of. Still, her students were hungry. They chose a rusted 1972 Dodge Charger, abandoned in the woods behind her uncle's shop. It was a wreck. No interior, seized engine, no roof. But they believed. Old steel, Jalen said. It's tougher than it looks. They worked day and night. Amara oversaw design. Jalen trained the welders. Local mechanics donated parts. The whole town brought food, support, and encouragement. Each bolt tightened wasn't just about horsepower, it was about identity, history, purpose. Meanwhile, Harrow's team worked in a polished warehouse outside Atlanta, designing a sleek electric prototype with biometric doors and drone-assisted sensors. It looked like the future. But Amara's car felt like soul. Asterisk asterisk. The day of the competition came. The air buzzed with nerves and gasoline. Judges from Ford, Tesla, and even GM lined up, clipboard in hand. Harrow's car performed flawlessly, smooth, efficient, impressive. Then came Team Langston's moment. The Charger, matte black with blood-red accents, growled to life with a custom hybrid V8 electric conversion. It roared down the track, hugging corners, the torque snapping heads back. But what turned eyes was what came next. The hood lifted via remote, revealing a tribute etched into the engine bay, for every girl told she couldn't. The crowd stood. Even a few judges had to wipe their eyes. The points were tallied. It was close. Too close. And then, winner of the Steel and Soul Classic, Langston Initiative. The crowd exploded. Students cried. Amara smiled, her mother's ring catching the light. But Harrow wasn't done. He approached, calm but cold. You win the grant. Fine. But this town can't hold back progress forever. We'll be back. Amara stood tall. Then come. We'll be ready. But we don't build just for trophies. We build for tomorrow. Asterisk asterisk. Later that night under the stars, Jalen wrapped his arms around her shoulders. You did it, he whispered. We did it, she corrected. But there's more to come. And there was. Because Amara had just received an invitation from the White House, an advisory seat on a national panel for youth in automotive innovation. And this time she wasn't going alone. She was bringing her students with her. It had been 3 weeks since Amara Johnson stood on the winner's platform of the Steel and Soul Classic, and already her life was shifting again, only this time the stakes were national. An embossed envelope had arrived with the presidential seal. She'd been invited to join the National Innovation Youth Council, a newly formed panel advising the Department of Education and Commerce on how to integrate skilled trades, technology, and hands-on learning into public schools. Amara, once a teenager fixing Mustangs in her uncle's backyard, was now seated among senators, CEOs, and Ivy League professors. But before she left Fairhill again, she gathered her students at the Langston Auto Barn. Listen, she told them, eyes focused and voice steady, I'm headed to Washington, but I'm not leaving you behind. What we started here, it's bigger than just this town. You're going to run this place. And I'm trusting you to lead. There was a silence, then 17-year-old Kian, the youngest in the crew, raised his hand. You mean like by ourselves? Not by yourselves, she smiled. With each other. Asterisk asterisk. Washington, D.C., was a world of steel towers, guarded doors and long words spoken in polished tones. Amara wore a charcoal blazer and her mother's ring. At the first meeting of the Innovation Council, they introduced her as Amara Johnson, mechanical engineer, Ford Motor Company. Founder of the Langston Initiative. Advocate for equitable education in skilled trades. She stood to speak, and her voice rang clear through the marble halls. STEM education can't live in PowerPoints alone, she said. In my town, we turn rust into purpose. We give kids tools, and they become architects of their own futures. Give us the resources, and we'll show you what innovation really looks like. The room grew quiet. Heads nodded. Cameras clicked. Later, a woman from the Department of Labor pulled her aside. Would you be interested in launching a pilot program? Government-funded apprenticeships. National scale. We'd start with your garage. Amara exhaled. I'm in. ***. Back in Fairhill, things weren't quiet. The VELOK Motors project had returned, stronger than ever. Harrow now had a city zoning proposal to turn 3 blocks, right near the Langston garage, into a VELOK innovation campus. They were lobbying the city council hard, promising jobs, tourism, progress. But Amara's students weren't idle. Kian stepped up first. He started teaching Saturday classes for younger teens, basic engine anatomy, tool safety, even welding demos. Then came Marisol, who started filming their projects and uploading to YouTube. Within a month, they had 20,000 subscribers. They called it Steel School. Meanwhile, Jalen had taken on a side project, restoring a rare 1965 Lincoln Continental convertible found in a junkyard outside Savannah. It was a mess of metal and memory, but he treated it like gold. This, he told the students, is our next showpiece. We'll finish it together. They began calling it the legacy car. ***. Months passed. Amara flew back and forth, working with DC officials by day, building with her crew by night. She no longer saw herself as split between two worlds, she was now a bridge. Then came the news. VELOK's proposal passed the first round of approval. They would be building across the street. It was a blow. But Amara didn't flinch. Instead, she called a press conference outside the garage. This isn't a fight between corporate and community, she said. This is a reminder that power doesn't just come from dollars, it comes from purpose. VELOK is welcome here, but they better be ready to compete. The next day she unveiled the Langston Fellowship, a scholarship for underprivileged youth pursuing engineering or trade school, funded by donations, sponsors, and her own Ford salary. The first 5 recipients would be announced at the next Steel and Soul Classic. That same week, Steel School crossed 100,000 subscribers. And the legacy car? It started to roar. ***. On the evening of its unveiling, Amara climbed into the driver's seat. The sky was purple, the town gathered, music drifting through the air. The Lincoln's engine rumbled like an old soul waking from sleep. She looked at Jalen. You ready? I've been ready, he said, taking the passenger seat. They drove slow through Fairhill, past shops, past schools, past the VELOK banners that waved on scaffolding. But everyone turned to cheer for them. Because this wasn't just a car. It was a message. We are still here. And we are not done. Spring came fast in Fairhill, bringing warmth, pollen, and pressure. The Langston Auto Barn was now more than just a garage. It had transformed into a hub of hope. Between the Steel School YouTube channel, the Langston Fellowship, and the National Pilot Apprenticeship Program, people from across the country were writing in, asking to visit, to learn, to contribute. But as the future bloomed, so did new threats. The town's school district, already underfunded and overstretched, announced a proposal to shut down Fairhill High's vocational wing. The welding bays, the drafting lab, the machine shop, all to be replaced by portable classrooms. Budget cuts, the board said. We need to focus on core academics. When Amara heard, she went still. That's where she had learned to weld. That hallway had been her first sanctuary after her mother died. She knew what would happen next. Another generation of kids with hands built for building would be funneled into dead-end classes that didn't speak their language. She rallied her crew. ***. The next week Kian, now 18 and the unofficial leader among the students, stood before the school board in his only button-up shirt, his voice trembling but fierce. My father taught me to fix bikes when I was 6. Amara taught me to fix engines when I was 16. I'm now a co-instructor at Steel School, I've built 2 cars, and I just got into NCA&TS engineering program. You shut down that shop, you're shutting down every kid like me who learns with their hands first. The board listened. But the numbers weren't in their favor. That night, Amara sat on the roof of the garage with Kian, watching lightning roll in the distance. You did good, Kian. I don't know if it matters, he said, voice quiet. We're still gonna lose it. We only lose when we stop fighting. He was silent for a long time. Then he asked, what if I'm not ready for college? What if I fail? Amara turned to him, eyes steady. Then you come home. And we build again. ***. The next day Marisol, Steel School's lead video editor, uploaded a powerful short doc titled, The Last Shop Class. It featured interviews with students, teachers, alumni, and clips of Amara and Kian welding side by side. The video exploded, shared by automotive influencers, educators, even a few celebrities. Within 72 hours, it hit 3.2 million views. The next week, the Langston garage received a call from a national educational nonprofit, Crafted Futures, offering a $750,000 grant to partner with the school district and preserve the vocational wing, under one condition: Amara and her students would design and lead the new curriculum. The board had no choice. The wing was saved. But the pressure wasn't over. ***. While the garage was growing, so was VELOK. They broke ground on their innovation campus, just 2 blocks down. Billboards went up, "Welcome to the future of driving." One of Amara's old mentors at Ford called her with a warning: they are poaching your talent. Offering high-paying jobs to your students. If you're not careful, they'll hollow out your whole program. Amara didn't blame the kids. Most had never seen money like that. Jalen was furious, but Amara kept her calm. We don't fight opportunity, she said. We make better ones. That night she unveiled a plan, Langston Rising, a full-year paid fellowship that would give students jobs at the garage, access to Ford training modules and mentorship from visiting engineers. The money came from a surprise donor, David Langston's estate, which had quietly grown in value and was now releasing yearly grants. We build our own pipeline, she told the crew. No one's stealing what we already own. ***. In the middle of all this, Amara got news that made everything else fade. Jalen's grandmother, the woman who had raised him, had passed away. She held him on the steps of the garage as he wept for the first time in years. I don't know what to do now, he whispered. You live, she said. You make her proud. Every day. ***. Weeks passed. The garage was louder than ever, welders sparking, hammers ringing, engines revving. The next Steel and Soul Classic was just months away, and this year, teams from 5 different states would compete. But Amara knew something deeper was shifting. This wasn't just about cars anymore. It was about power. Community. Legacy. They were no longer just fixing engines. They were building a movement. And the road ahead? It was wide open. Amara was tired. Not just physically, though the back-to-back meetings, late-night welding sessions and constant travel had taken their toll, but deeply, soulfully tired. The kind of tired that settled in your bones when you carried a whole community on your shoulders. It wasn't burnout exactly. It was fear. Things were going well, too well maybe. Steel School had crossed 500,000 subscribers. The Langston Fellowship had its first class of graduates headed to college or apprenticeships. The Department of Education had even extended her pilot program to 5 more states. But Amara couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to break. Then came the first blackout. She was giving a speech at the state capitol in Montgomery, standing in a bright blue suit, her mother's ring catching the light, speaking about how trades could save underserved schools, when everything spun. Her legs buckled. Her speech slurred. A sharp pain hit her temple like lightning. She collapsed. The next thing she remembered was the fluorescent ceiling of a hospital room. "You're dehydrated. Stressed," the doctor said. "You've been pushing yourself too hard. We need to run some neurological scans. Just to be safe." Amara nodded faintly, but she was already thinking about the kids back at the garage. About the next classic. About the senator she was supposed to meet next week. About whether she could reschedule without drawing attention. "Rest," the doctor repeated. "Now. Or this becomes permanent." ***. Back in Fairhill, Jalen was livid. "You didn't tell me," he said, pacing in her kitchen. "You almost passed out in front of the governor and didn't call me. I didn't want to scare you." Too late. She looked down at her hands, calloused from years of work. "If I slow down now, what happens to everything we've built?" "You built people, Amara," he said. "We can carry it. Let us." She nodded slowly. And for the first time in years, she agreed to step back. ***. For a month, Amara stayed local. She stopped flying. She let Kian and Marisol run Steel School. She let Jalen take over the training programs. She started journaling again. Walking again. Sleeping. But as her body healed, her heart began to shift. Because something had changed between her and Jalen. He had always been there, like gravity, quiet, steady, present. But now, he wasn't just holding her up. He was holding her. One night, as a thunderstorm rolled over Fairhill and the garage stood silent in the dark, Jalen took her hand. "I've been thinking about your ring," he said. She smiled. "It's my mother's." "I know. And I'd never ask you to take it off. But I was wondering if maybe it could sit next to another one." She froze. Then looked up at him. "Are you proposing to me with no ring, no speech, and during a thunderstorm?" He grinned. "It's our thing." And she laughed. And then nodded. "Yes," she said, heart thundering louder than the rain. "Yes. ***. The news hit the garage like a burst of numbers. "You're getting married." Kian shouted, grinning like he'd just won another trophy. "We throwing a block party or what?" They did. It wasn't a traditional wedding. Amara wore her garage coveralls with a lace veil, and Jalen wore a tuxedo shirt under an oil-stained jacket. They stood under the hood of the first car they built together, a restored 1968 Mustang, and said their vows surrounded by grease-streaked students, old teachers and neighbors with lawn chairs. David Langston's cousin officiated. The Unity Band played soul covers all night. And Amara, for the first time in a decade, she danced without a deadline on her mind. ***. But joy has its shadows. The following Monday, she got the test results from her doctor. Early signs of multiple sclerosis. Manageable, but progressive. No cure. No guarantees. She sat in silence. Then she picked up her phone. And she called a meeting with her students, her staff and her partners. "I need you all to hear this from me," she said. "My body's going to slow down. My mind might too someday. But this mission we don't stop. We prepare. We pass the torch while the fire's still strong." She paused, tears in her eyes. "I'm not leaving. But I am sharing the wheel." And Kian stepped forward. So did Marisol. And then the rest. One by one. "You taught us how to drive," Kian said. "Now we drive for you." ***. That night, Amara returned to the garage. Alone. She stood by the Mustang, touched its hood and whispered, "Mama, we're still rolling." And outside, beneath a sky lit with stars and sparks, the students began a new project. Their biggest yet. A solar-electric fusion concept car, built from recycled steel and hope. They would name it the Phoenix. Because even as fire fades, it always finds a way to rise. 3 years later, the Langston Auto Barn didn't look like it used to. It was bigger, expanded with solar panels, a second bay, and a two-story wing called the Legacy Lab. The walls were lined with framed photos of every student who had passed through the program, every car they'd restored, every race they'd entered. But the heart of it hadn't changed. The music still blasted from open speakers. The steel still sparked. And hope still lived in the hands of every kid who picked up a wrench and believed they could change their future. Amara sat beneath the awning with a cane at her side, her eyes shaded by a Langston racing cap. Her walk was slower now, and her speech sometimes stuck, but her voice still carried the gravity of someone who had built something that mattered. Kian was 21 now, tall, confident, and commanding. He'd just returned from Germany, where he had spoken at an international trades and education summit as one of the youngest keynote speakers in the world. Marisol was in her final year at Howard, running Steel School remotely. They had just crossed 1 million subscribers, with episodes subtitled in 9 languages. And Jalen? He ran the shop floor now, the heartbeat of the garage. But every lunch break he'd sit with Amara and share stories, about cars, kids, or just the breeze coming off the hills. ***. The Phoenix, oh the Phoenix. That car had become a legend. Built by Amara's crew from the ground up, it was a hybrid electric monster with recycled carbon fiber panels, solar skin, and an onboard AI co-piloted by students. They unveiled it at the Detroit Tech Expo and stole the show. Headlines called it the future of American innovation, built in a backstreet garage. Ford offered to license the tech. Tesla invited Kian to intern. But they said no. Instead, they partnered with public universities, turning the Phoenix into a case study for community-driven design. More than that, it became a symbol. Because it wasn't about a car. It was about what happens when you invest in people everyone else counted out. ***. Amara stood on stage one last time at the annual Steel and Soul Classic, now the largest youth-run automotive showcase in the country. She looked out at the thousands of faces, students from 50 states, from rural towns, inner cities, even tribal reservations, holding their tools like they were holding the future. She spoke slowly but clearly. People once said this neighborhood had nothing. That our kids couldn't make it. That we didn't have the tools or the time. They were wrong. She looked at Kian. At Jalen. At the students behind her. You are the proof. You are the spark. You are the engine. She raised her cane like a baton. And no matter what road you drive it with purpose. ***. In the years that followed, the Langston model spread across the country. 1,000 garages bloomed like wildflowers, places where kids learned trades, gained dignity, and built more than machines. They built futures. And Amara? She wrote a book. Steel and Soul, How We Built Something That Lasts. It became a national bestseller. Not for its fame, but because people saw themselves in her story. In a woman who got her hands dirty, told the truth, and never stopped building. Even when her body told her to stop. Even when the world said not you. Even when the system said no. She built anyway. Because that's what builders do. They don't wait for permission. They just begin. ***. On the last page of her book, Amara wrote, "A car is just metal and fire until someone gives it direction. A life is the same way. So find your road. And drive." The end.